Minister for his contribution. I now give the floor to the Acting Prime Minister. Your right of reply.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, just a couple of points. As I said in the introduction of the bill itself, this is no different to the earlier bill that we had, and the focus of this particular bill, of course, is the two-pronged. One is the extension from 1 to 5 years. The other one, of course, which is predominantly the reason why this was brought about, was because of the exemption to grant people, firstly, the renewal of the license, and secondly, Mr. Speaker, say if they faced hardship, and secondly was the exemption in respect of the payment of the license fees. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, if that exemption is sought, the minister or the license will be renewed only for 1 year, not for 5 years, if they seek the exemption. However, if they do not seek the exemption, then when they do apply, they can apply for 5 years. It says not exceeding 5 years, which means the person has the choice. They can come and say, I want it for 1 year, I want it for 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years, or 5 years. So it's their choice, because it depends on how much fees they want to pay. So again, there's been this approach, they see the number 5 and they think, oh, it's a carte blanche, everybody will get 5 years. The wording is not exceeding 5 years. So basically, it's up to them. The other point that, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to make was that in respect of why is the minister, Honorable Chale said, you know, why can't, firstly, he said, why can't the minister be given the right to exempt people for other reasons? Well, actually, if they look at the history of the laws that we've been amending, sir, we are trying to take away the powers that used to be given to the ministers previously, where they were given carte blanche powers to, and it became very subjective. Case in point, previously under the Immigration Act, the minister responsible for immigration could actually grant citizenship to anybody, as the minister saw fit. And Honorable Lalan Balabu would know this. There are people who came to this country running away from the law, and they in fact were given citizenship within 6 months or 9 months, because at that time the minister had the discretionary powers to do so. That discretionary power, Mr. Speaker, sir, was taken away under the Bainimarama government. You had to meet a particular criteria and fulfill that criteria, only then you would be given a Fijian citizenship. You will see a number of areas, Mr. Speaker, sir, where we've amended the laws where the discretionary powers, in fact, the carte blanche discretionary powers, which is very subjective, have been taken away from the minister. So, Honorable Chale, this is the reason why. And it's specific to COVID-19 only. Somebody should not come along and say, well, look, you know, I didn't feel like paying it, and by the way, you know, you are from Navosa and I'm from Navosa, and therefore give it to me. Or I'm from Laos and give it to me. That does not happen. There's a specific stated reason in the law why and only when that exemption can be given. Honorable Chale and obviously Honorable Kurindrani, I think, or one of the other backbenchers, seem to be in conflict. He's saying, why can't the minister be given more powers? Honorable Kurindrani said, why is the minister being given the powers to exempt the fees? Why can't it be a licensing authority? Under the Tobacco Act, Mr. Speaker, sir, the licensing authority is the Permanent Secretary for Health. Fees is a policy decision. Parliament and government set fees. Most of the laws in Fiji, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is an enabling provision in the Substantive Act that says the minister may make fees, and then it's put in the schedule under the regulations or in the regulations by the minister. It's a policy decision. In the same way, for example, when the Bainimarama government was appointed, the fees or the fine for not wearing a seatbelt was $80. That was exactly the fees or fine that was paid in Queensland, where the LTA Act was brought from. They used to pay 80 Australian dollars. When they brought it to Fiji, they did not change it. We reduced it to $40, I think it was, $40 or $20, because it did not sync with the income level of people in Fiji. So when you have a penalty that's too high, it leads to corruption. Because the person pulling you over for not wearing a seatbelt knows that you probably some person who's earning only $120, $150 a week. And if I'm going to sock you $80 for not wearing a seatbelt, there has to be some arrangement. And that's what used to happen. So the fees and the penalties need to be in alignment with the socio-economic conditions. And that's why it's a policy decision, and that's why, Honorable Kurindrani, it's actually given to the minister responsible. That's the rationale. Because the civil servants, they're not answerable to the public. They're answerable to the law that's given to them that empowers them to do X, Y, Z. That's fundamentally the reason. Please try and understand that. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other issue that I would like to also make, he said, oh, it leads to nepotism, corruption. No, it doesn't. Because you see, he's guided by this. If tomorrow the Honourable Minister gives exemption to somebody because of some other reason other than COVID-19, actually he can be charged for corruption. He can be charged for corruption. It's precisely the reason why it's put in the law. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I would also like to make very quickly, Honourable Gerringeri Tambua, really, I think, she, like her leader, is watching too many conspiracy theories, movies, whatever it is. Mr. Speaker, sir, she went on about 56 and 59. 56 says, I read it, a member may not vote on a question in relation to which the member has a financial interest. May not vote on a question in relation to which the member has had a financial interest. If the member does vote, the vote may be disallowed by a motion moved without notice, etc. Mr. Speaker, it says on a question. You need to read the fine details of the law. The other one, Mr. Speaker, says 59. And she had a go at the Secretariat. She said, what have they been doing? It's not the Secretariat's responsibility. The standing orders are there for the members to adhere to. It's got nothing to do with the Secretary General of Parliament. 59, it says, a member must, before participating, a member, not the Secretariat, a member must, before participating in the consideration of any item of business, such as speaking in Parliament or sitting on a committee, declare any financial interest that the member has in that business, if the interest is not already contained in any register of pecuniary or other specified interest of members of Parliament. We had Honourable Niko Nawaikula yesterday speaking on FBC when he has a case before the courts in which the courts has actually said he must pay $3,000 in costs. He did not declare that. You see, Honourable Gerringeri Tambua, you are being very subjective. You are being very selective also in respect of what you take as an analysis. And this is whole entire conspiracy theory about some pharmacist, etc. Did he give us money? I can tell you, in the 2014 elections under Honourable Kepa, one of the candidates was actually someone, Davalevu, who was actually funded by him. He worked for him. You see, let's compare apples with apples. You're sitting there in a little corner with the other two members of yours and coming up with conspiracy theories. Everything must be linked. Honourable Seruratu, Minister Seruratu, before you spoke, actually spoke about that former employee of British American Tobacco. But you have a written speech, you see, so you just read it. We did not hear what he said. And he actually said that that person is starting up a manufacturing company with the tobacco leaves. He declared it. He said it. But you continue to make it sound as if there's some kind of conspiracy theory. And we are actually glad that a person of that type of caliber of training and exposure work for British American Tobacco will now provide an alternative manufacturing facility in Fiji, because British American Tobacco, as well as it has done, we're very grateful to British American Tobacco, there'll be some competition now. There are farmers in Ba, I know specifically, and Nandi, who are being offered more for the tobacco leaves. He's sitting there like, I've discovered something. Nothing about it. This is creating this is competition. This is, look at him. This is competition. This is competition. Mr. Speaker, sir, and she went on about how maybe giving money here, there. We are the only political party that has declared all the donations. It even got published on the website. We don't do lamb chop curry night, whatever it is. We don't do that. We don't do palau night or whatever. In the intro, Gosfulia, we do it in the interest of transparency. And they have made a mockery of it. They have made a mockery of it. And essentially, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think essentially it fundamentally boils... Mr. Speaker, sir, it fundamentally boils down to the point, I think... Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it fundamentally boils down to the point that NFP cannot digest that we have such support. Such support, Mr. Speaker, sir. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I'd also like to make, Honourable Member, in fact, Minister for Health has already commented again about the COVID-19 testing kits. What's so conspiratorial about that? Every person, whether supermarket, pharmacies, even supermarkets are now making inquiries. Shop and Save and others want to bring in these testing kits to make it more readily available, more cheaply available. The Permanent Secretary for Health, when we announced the easing of the restrictions, said, once we have far more testing kits and trained people available, the 3-day requirement will actually be looked at again. We may not necessarily have to do the 3 days, making it further easier, both for our citizens coming back and tourists coming back to Fiji. Every country in the world that has gained efficiencies in respect of how they deal with COVID-19 has had private sector participation. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I mean, I can go on, Honourable Speaker, sir, about various companies that give them money, gave Sodelpa money or gave NFP money under the table. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. But, you know, I'm not here to talk about that. But that's all they do. That's all they do. That's what they're obsessed with. Not a single member from the other side has given an alternative. Not a single member. And they're saying we're using the Suki sellers. We receive text messages, emails from them saying, please, we need to be exempted. Now, Ministry of Health requires all of these people to have a business registration, a business name at the very least. January, if you went up, sir, to the company's office, it was filled literally with hundreds of people, tens of dozens of people just wanting to come and do the registration. That's what the Honourable Sajid Anand was talking about. So, Mr. Speaker said, this is obviously trying to improve the system. There are many processes till today. We've had discussions in Cabinet. We've said to all the ministers, please look at all your different ministries, look at where there's processes, where there are applications, and how we can fast-track things. How we can amend the regulations and laws or even internal processes to be able to, Mr. Speaker, sir, make sure that the services are in fact delivered properly and a lot more efficiently. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Prasad talked about having a jibe at the Minister for Health, all the queues are long. But again, you see, they did not talk about the fact that government, in the past number of months since last year, has now begun to outsourcing GP services to the private sector. We've had literally hundreds of people, the Minister for Health gets that feedback, other ministers get that feedback, how people are so grateful now who could not afford to go and see a private GP can now go and see a private GP, reduce the lines, Mr. Speaker, sir, reduce the lines because they're not everybody is seriously ill. They may have one particular ailment that a GP can fix up. And as we've said, we're already going to put out another advertisement because more GPs are willing and interested in participating in this. This is heading towards a national approach. As in the same way, Mr. Speaker, so you find in Australia we have a Medicare system where if you are ill, you go and see a private GP. You don't go rushing off to the hospital. The hospital will see you for more serious matters. If you've got a headache, you've got a runny nose, you go and see the private GP, your local GP. They will know your family history. They will know what happened to you 1 month ago, etc. A lot more closer relationship between the GP and the patient themselves. This is the building blocks of building a better health system. See, all they go on about, of course, the Minister for Health himself has admitted, not everything is perfect. Not everything is perfect, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we have a number of policies in itself, Mr. Speaker, sir, that addresses those issues. The last point I want to make, somebody mentioned about Bill 17. I'd like to reiterate that there's no more Bill 17. There's Act 22. Get with the program. Act 22. If you say Bill 17 has got no merit, if you say Bill 17 in a few weeks' time, that'll be Bill from this year. Act 22 of 21. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, all the shenanigans that came out after that, because they saw for themselves a political opportunity. In the same way, and I have to say this, Honourable Bulitavu, Honourable Niko Nawaikula, before the 2014 elections, made all these videos or DVDs saying if you vote for this government, this constitution, your land will go away. Nothing like that happened. Before the elections, they said Kandavu was going to be sold. Nothing happened. Bill 17, they said your land will go away, etc. Nothing's happened. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the level of contribution and intellectual input and disingenuity put out by the opposition. And I'd like to urge all members to support this bill, and I'd like to thank all those people who reached out to us. And it's not just the Suki sellers. There are people who run sell tobacco in their normal shops, the mum and dad shops around the corner, in some rural area, in some cooperative. They also have to get a license. Honorable Charlie talked about a cooperative in the outer islands. They have to get a tobacco license too. So that they go out trudging off in their boat for $300-400, get it every year. Now they can get it for 5 years. That's going to help them, sir. Now, if they weren't able to operate because of COVID-19, and there were shops that were closed down because of the lockdown. Of course there were. There were market vendors who could not sell. There were market suki sellers who could not come down to Suva because Suva was on a lockdown. 6 weeks. So their income was affected. They can apply for an exemption and they'll get it for 1 year. These are the people we are trying to help, sir. As opposed to some big conspiracy theory propagated by those 3 people in the corner. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is in fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to thank all members who supported this bill, and I'd like to wish the passing of this particular bill, sir, into law. We'd like to tell all those people who've been affected by this that we have actually come to your relief once again for ordinary Fijians. Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, the Parliament will now vote. The question is, pursuant to the resolution of Parliament on Wednesday, 9th February 2022, that the Tobacco Control Amendment Bill 2022 be debated, voted upon and be passed. Does any member oppose the motion? If, honourable members, there being opposition, Parliament will vote by acclamation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. Honourable members, the motion is agreed to. Secretary General.
A bill for